Please join me in welcoming Ayah Bdeir and Sean Cavanagh.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Greg, and good morning to everyone. I hope you're enjoying the South by Southwest EDU conference and all the sights and sounds of Austin, especially the sounds, which I'm told Austin is famous for. I'm pleased to be leading a discussion today with Ayah Bdeir. Ayah is the founder and CEO of littleBits, a 21st century learning tool that is at the forefront of the maker movement. Ayah is also an engineer and an interactive artist. She's a TED senior fellow and an alum of the MIT Media Lab. So let me start with a question that will help introduce you to our audience. What is littleBits and what is its relationship with the maker movement? Can you describe that for us?
littleBits is a platform of electronic building blocks, individual circuits that snap together with magnets, such as lights and sounds and sensors, but also more complex ones like wireless control and cloud connectivity. And the goal is to be the building blocks for creative innovation. The way we think about it is that we want to unleash the inventor in everyone and allow everyone to be able to use technology, even if they're not an engineer, they're not technical, they don't know how to program. So we're very excited because I have some slides here that are supporting. We're very excited because I myself studied engineering, but it was a very tedious journey. And one of the things that we hold very dear to our heart is how do we make engineering and technology in general fun, creative, and most importantly, open to people that are outside the field.
Yeah. I know that the concept of maker ed, as well as the concept of STEAM, science and math plus engineering and design, is on everyone's minds these days. I see a lot of sessions at this conference that are focused on the maker movement. How do you feel about the movement behind, the momentum behind STEAM? Where is it headed? Where do you think we're going to be a few years from now?
So, I mean, first of all, this is a question that I get sometimes. What is STEAM? STEAM is sort of an iteration on top of STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And STEAM is the addition of art into the equation. I'm very excited by the momentum around STEM and STEAM. A few years ago, when President Obama launched an initiative that's focused on getting 100,000 teachers to be equipped to teach STEAM, and billion-dollar initiative to get more STEM into the classroom. And just recently, a few weeks ago, another campaign, CS for All, to get computer science into classrooms. And you're seeing more and more companies that are picking it up, and more institutions. And it's very exciting to see all that momentum because it's necessary. It's something that we need to bring and take seriously in the classroom. The challenge that I find is that we're sort of going out into the world and demanding that teachers bring in STEM and STEAM into the classroom. It's essential, it's part of your requirements. And there are two problems. On one hand, we're not suggesting how to do it differently. I studied STEM, and I studied in a way that was very unengaging, and so
boring. You can say it.
Very, very boring, and I wanted to quit multiple times. Honestly, I did engineering, and I almost on a weekly basis wanted to quit engineering. And so, telling a teacher you need to teach STEM, you need to teach STEAM, without any new way of doing it is just a recipe of more of the same, and that hasn't worked. The other thing that for me is concerning is not giving teachers the tools to be successful, because teachers are extremely busy, and teachers have the hardest job in the world. I think it's for you. I have to.
You just
applaud
scored
you.
points with this audience.
I have to be the one applauding. I mean, we have to be the one applauding. It's the hardest job in the world, and so also imposing on teachers that you now have to teach STEM and STEAM, and it's your requirement, and it's mandated, but without giving you the tools to do it is adding so much pressure, and is intimidating teachers. So those are things that I find concerning. But overall, I think that the momentum is huge. It's essential. We have to ride on it. We have to get excited by it, and we're very, very excited, and definitely, jumping on board to help in any way that we can.
Speaking of which, I know that your company's making a shift into the K-12 movement, and into the area of STEAM more directly, bringing that into K-12. But we also talked about how you're trying to create a lot of wraparound supports for teachers as you do that. Could you describe the news on that front that you're announcing today?
So technically, I was supposed to wait till the end to unveil our announcement, but
hey, I'm a reporter. We want the news first.
Yeah. No, I'm also a very impatient person. So, I'd love to take this opportunity to make our announcement today. We're very, very excited to launch a product that we've been working on for a little while, that's specifically focused on the education space, trying to solve some of the things that I just mentioned. On one hand, providing a new point of view on how to make STEM and STEAM engaging, and the other challenge, which is giving teachers more support so that the pressure is not all on them. So I'd like to show you a video that can go.
littleBits are these wonderful components that snap together that make things happen.
When you walk into a classroom and a student is engaged in a project, authentically, they can tell you what they're doing, why they're doing it, and why it's important. Projects with littleBits allow students to do that because they can build things and design projects that are exciting to them and meaningful to them.
Working with littleBits, you automatically have a STEAM curriculum. What can you design and make that'll help or solve a problem? Before it was, I can draw that, I can imagine that, but now it's, I can actually make it. Even their vocabulary has changed. They talk about my prototype, third graders I wasn't talking about prototypes in third grade.
littleBits work well with library drop-in programs because they don't require a lot of teaching. It's really just explain the colors, show them how they snap together, and then let them start creating.
There is no high learning curve with littleBits. It's very easy. You can put a suitcase of bits in front of a group of students and they will teach themselves. So we encourage the girls to go onto the littleBits website and use the littleBits app for inspiration. But ultimately, it runs itself. It's plug and play.
As a principal, I'm looking for products that allow teachers to experiment and to feel successful. One of the challenges with STEM learning is engineering is usually a topic that teachers have not had a lot of training in. So to have a product where the teachers can learn alongside the children is also very powerful.
littleBits help children discover that they're scientists, they're inventors, they're problem solvers, they're artists, and that they're capable of a lot more than they thought.
I was watching that, I was thinking back to my own experiences as a young student. Ideas like engineering and design were nowhere to be found in my mind, obviously, but the idea of building stuff was something I always got really excited about. And so it's interesting to watch students and teachers focusing on building some of these more complex concepts in a very simple way, in an approachable way. I wanted to ask you, because I think some folks in our audience will be curious about this. I know you ended up studying at MIT, but how'd you get there? What was your education experience like? What led you into the world of engineering, entrepreneurship? Can you describe that for us?
I actually never wanted to be an engineer, but I I grew up breaking things open and making a mess of every piece of technology that was around me. And when it was time to pick what I wanted to do in college, I wanted to be a designer. But my parents and my teachers said that I owed it to myself to do engineering because I was good at math and science. And a few minutes ago, I was mentioning that I did engineering in a very boring way. This is an example that I like to give. This is the first main class that we took in engineering school. It's the Z80 processor. It's a process that we studied over 2 semesters. All theoretical, learning assembly code, learning its architecture, learning how to program it, almost practically never touching a piece of hardware during those 2 semesters. And it was the opposite of what I was mentioning a few minutes ago and what we're trying to do now. It was a learning experience that was completely hands-off, completely top-down, all about sort of memorizing and regurgitating information. And as a result, myself and a lot of the other students in the class were really not engaged in it. Contrasted that a few years later, I went to the Media Lab at MIT to do my master's, and there is where I sort of experienced for the first time a completely different learning environment. The first class I took at the Media Lab was called How to Make Almost Anything. It's led by Neil Gershenfeld, who's the father of the Fab Lab movement. And it was the absolute opposite. Every week there was a new piece of technology, a new challenge that you had, and a new project that you would experience. And we would learn the tools through that. And it was extremely difficult, very, very scary and intimidating, but it was so engaging. You could not stop yourself from researching more and trying more and getting engaged. And so these are some of the inspirations that we've taken in and tried to say, okay, how do we take this experience out of the elite schools of the world, and so that you don't have to have gone through 6 years of engineering, you don't have to go through an MIT admission process to experience this. Everybody should experience this in every school at every level. And so that's sort of what we're trying to focus on.
I'm curious, thinking back on that process, what made that experience so difficult for you as a student? You're exposed to this new way of learning. Do you remember what made it so challenging for you in terms of the concepts that the teacher was talking about?
It was almost like being thrown into the ring. Every Monday morning. Every Monday morning you had, this week we're going to learn about laser cutters. This is how they work. This is what the science behind it is. This is how the tool works. This is a demo of the technology. You have 4 days to come up with a project that utilizes concepts of fit and friction to create a giant structure. Go. And you'd be like, what? I'm still on. Welcome to Monday morning. So it was just it forces you to dive right in, not to obsess over research and writing papers, and just kind of learn as you go. And it's the whole ethos of the Media Lab of lifelong learning that I believe is super powerful.
I know that I've covered a lot of beats at Education Week. I was formerly covering math and science education. And as long as I've been at Education Week, we've been writing about the importance of engaging students in school, not only for their overall learning, but if we're going to try to draw more students into science and math focused studies and professions. What's the fundamental bet or premise you're making on how littleBits will engage students in particular, and how that will translate from out of school to in-school experiences?
So we actually started, disclaimer, I'm not an educator. We at littleBits are not educators. We are very passionate about education, but we are not formally trained educators. But what we've done is we've instead looked at it from the user's perspective, which is the kid, the student. We've spent, so littleBits is a little bit over 4 years old. I started the company in 2011. And as you said before, we started mainly in the consumer market, more directing to parents, kids, but also designers in the consumer market. Between 2011 and 2014, we made about 14 different kits. And we tried a lot of things, and we learned a lot from them. And then in 2015, we started the year, and we said, okay, we're going to take a pause. We're going to look at all the past 4 years and learn from what works and doesn't work, and listen to our community, and we made one kit that we launched last year called the littleBits Gizmos and Gadgets kit. That was a kit that is it's for the consumer market. It's for parents and kids, and we called it the ultimate invention toolbox. In that kit were all the learnings that we had received from how to really engage a kid in invention and how to help them unleash their inner inventor. But it was mostly focused for the home. So it had bits, but it also had other materials. It has accessories like wheels and pulleys. It has an invention guide and an app, but it's mostly focused on the home. That kit did really well. We won hundreds of awards and gift guides on it, and we're really excited by the momentum. And then what we decided is we're going to take all this learning that we got from this sort of individual experience and then apply it to education. So this is why we're very excited by the announcement today of the STEAM student set. It represents our first real commitment into education by the Gizmos and Gadgets kit was called the invention, the toolbox for invention. The STEAM student set is the toolbox for invention-based learning. Right. So it's sort of an extension of that same idea that invention, real-world challenges, and problem solving are the engagement mechanism to then inject rigorous scientific, mathematical, or other concepts at the heels of them. So I have some, maybe I'll show you some examples. Oops, can I go back? Never mind. So this is some simple examples. You know, instead of just including a motor and having kind of puzzle-like experiences for the students, we try to relate them always to the real world. Where do you see motors in the real world? Like in the case of a servo, it's similar to a truck crane or windshield wipers. Try to really help them match the things they learn in school to life around it. Invention-based learning is, as an example, is using challenges where for the student, they're trying to solve the challenge. The challenge is fun and modern and relates to their lives. And by the way, they're learning concepts of mechanics and motion and friction and others. In this case, the challenge is invent a throwing arm. And so they're putting all these cups in a formation and they're competing to make this pyramid of cups break by changing the torque and the angle and the speed of the motor. And so they're learning all these things, but instead of them being imposed on them, they are pulling. So it's a very transformative experience. We did hundreds of hours of user testings with teachers in formal classrooms, in libraries, and after-school programs, and kept sort of refining to get a little bit of the formula right, so that it had enough fun and excitement and a sort of virality in the class that gets one kid's excitement to infect another, but at the same time had the rigor that the teacher needed with a very thorough teacher guide and connection to NGSS standards and kind of more scaffolding around it.
I wanted to turn back to something, at the risk of asking you a sort of a basic question here, but I would imagine that a lot of teachers and administrators might say to themselves, well, you've got science and math, and then you've got art over here, and these are disconnected subjects, disconnected concepts. What does the merging of these subjects together bring? How does that inspire learning in your view?
So, I mean, the word STEAM is clearly not our word. It was coined by the former president of RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, John Maida, who is an incredible designer, technologist, and one of our advisors, actually. And his premise was that as we invest more in STEM, we cannot forget art and design and humanities. And invest in STEM at the expense of them. And what we believe, what I think is really important, is that embedded in art and design are concepts that are really important to impart on students. The concept of iteration. If you're making a piece of art, there is no one answer. It's not like we've taught science before, was like there's one answer to your question. In art, you're making art, it's open-ended, it's explorative, and the concept of iteration and not being afraid of failure is embedded in it. The concept also of pooling different tools and materials is embedded in art and design as well. And so you merge that with teaching STEM, and suddenly you have, you're starting to prepare students with notions, with not specific content that they learn, but a mindset and a way about solving problems. It's to prepare them to careers that haven't been invented yet. This particular example that we have here is a self-driving vehicle. When I went to school, there were no self-driving cars. When I went to school, there was no profession called data science or user experience or growth hacking. These things didn't exist. And so we have to understand professions are changing, and what we're trying to equip students with is a way of learning, is a way of solving a problem, and art and design provide a really important lens to that. So.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, this falls more in the category of a business-oriented question, but I think that it might be of interest to some folks in this audience. You mentioned that your company focused primarily on the consumer market before, and now you're making a transition into the K-12 space. There are going to be a lot of companies at this conference who are probably interested in making a similar transition. Maybe you can describe what were some of the factors you had to consider as a company in making that shift into K-12 away from consumer. What were some of the challenges you faced? What advice would you give to folks who are thinking about making that leap?
I think two probably pieces of advice. One is don't listen to people. And I say that because when we first started, we were interested in the education market, and everybody around us was like, no, the education market is so difficult. It's really difficult to pierce through. It's really difficult to get anything sold through. You have to be with large distributors. It's very bureaucratic. It will take many years. Don't do it. And so we didn't. We put an education discount on the website, and we focused on the consumer market. And a couple of years later, we looked and we were like, whoa, there are over 1,000 schools using littleBits, and these are just teachers that have come in and kind of bought them for themselves, and for various uses, anything from science and math, but also arts and crafts, grammar, entrepreneurship, all sorts of things that we never imagined. So my first piece of advice is, if you think that you want to be in it, just try it and kind of don't obsess over it. But my second piece of advice is maybe the opposite of the first one, which is that it needs to be a serious commitment, because it's a profession that is very important, that we have to be respectful of. And so if you are not genuinely committed to education, you can't pretend. You have to genuinely have a point of view and be passionate about helping improve the situation, and not just consider it another sales channel, because it's absolutely not that.
Yeah, you alluded to this, but we've been reporting at Education Week for a while about people talk about the barriers to entry in the K-12 system, that it stifles innovation, that it's highly bureaucratic, highly regulated. I take it you're not buying into that. You think companies like yours can succeed if you've got a product that teachers want, if it's attuned to their needs. Is that right? So
I don't discount the challenges. They're real. They're absolutely real. We're having to learn a new type of talking, a new type of thinking. The team has to be different. So we have to adapt to the needs of the education space. And I don't take that lightly at all. We're not at all arrogant about it. But what we're seeing is that if we showcase some of the stories and the case studies that are happening around the world, there's about 2,200 schools now using littleBits. If we showcase some of the stories, they sort of speak for themselves, because nobody that works in education, I believe, has any malice or desire to stifle innovation. They're just sort of, each person has their own kind of realities that they're working within. And so if we show them, this is a different way of doing it, and here are all the tools that you need, just try it, we've seen that there's more pickup. I actually have a few examples that maybe I'll show.
Great.
Will it move? Yeah. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yes. It works. Yes. It works right every time I do.
This is an example in a library in Connecticut, actually, where the students, when last holiday the Star Wars toy BB-8 came out, we saw all these different iterations of kids wanting to make their own BB-8. And so in this case, they took a globe and they pierced through it, they put a bunch of motors, they put wireless controls in it, and they made their own BB-8. And then suddenly you start to see them start to like iterate and want to put something else on top of it, and what else can we make move, and all of that. And so they're launching in this kind of educational experience on their own, and you don't have to kind of inject it into them. We've seen another, this is another example, a challenge that we launched called Invent for Good. Look around your life for somebody that you can help or problem that you can solve, and so we're tapping into their empathy, and that was incredible to see the results of. This next video actually is really fun to see. Oh, it's not a video. So this is an example in Colonial District in Pennsylvania where students started to create solutions for people with disabilities. So they made giant keyboards that are musical, that are engaging. This is a fun example of a patient that has cystic fibrosis who wants to, in a hospital in Tennessee, who created a dryer for a nebulizer for her friend who's also a patient, and wants to help her kind of solve her real world problem. And by the way, she's also kind of learning and engaging with electronics. So it's fun, but it's also extremely heartwarming. And we find that if you start to showcase these stories, it's difficult to turn away.
I'm curious, when you look at the projects that students, and in some cases with the help and direction of teachers, are coming up with, are you surprised by the end products, or are they pretty much what you would have expected with folks using the littleBits project? Or sometimes do students turn up projects that go in directions you totally didn't expect?
Incredibly surprised on a daily basis. We have we use Slack at the office, and we have a channel called The Moment, where we share pictures and videos and stories from that moment where we see somebody get inspired and get empowered. And so we share these stories, and on a daily basis, I'm surprised by things that we see, things that we didn't expect, things that are either really, really clever, or very heartwarming, or very innovative, or just mischievous. And it's lovely to see. Actually, this next video is fun to see.
This has a special cast that has a fan built into it. It also has places that you can scratch your skin if you have an itch. Wow, I really wish my brother had this, and it's super comfortable. Ask your doctor for an AeroCast 3000 today if your arm is broken.
So this is an example. One of our schools that we work with is an all-girls school in New York, Marymount, and they've been using littleBits very extensively. So this is an entrepreneurship class that these third graders took, and they're inventing for good. So they've invented this scratching cast broken arm situation to help people with a broken arm be able to scratch and itch, and at the same time cool. It has a fan, so it allows you to cool your arm while it's in there. And it's just I've never expected to see that. It's not the kind of thing that you even think might happen, but it also helps inspire others.
I'm going to ask this question, put on my journalist hat, partly because I'm curious. How many of the folks in this audience are teachers, administrators, K-12 officials? Just show of hands up here out in the dark, a pretty good number. How many are developers of products for companies, nonprofits? Okay, we've got a good mix. just curious, how many of you have had some direct contact with a makerspace, either in a library, as a parent? Okay, so we've got, you all are not just observers, you're in some cases users of these products. I wanted to ask you a question in the area of education policy. I know that school districts around the country are under tremendous pressure to improve academic achievement, often as measured by high-stakes tests. I was expecting, some jeers, booing from the audience when I mentioned all these high-stakes tests, but I would imagine in some schools, district administrators would look at this and say, this looks great, terrific idea, seems to engage students, generate a lot of enthusiasm, but how am I going to make this work given the pressure I'm under to improve student test scores, to hit on all these academic targets? So what's the case you would make for why littleBits and MakerEd generally can succeed and make sense in this sort of high-stakes academic environment?
Well, first I would say that if we are optimizing for success, the first thing we have to do is stop vilifying people that are advocating for standards. You may disagree, and you may have a different method. You may not believe in standard testing and all of that, but vilification and creating this polarization is not productive for anyone. So I think that's kind of the most important thing. As product makers, it is our job to help answer that question, to transfer the pressure and the hard work on the administrators and on the teachers and tell them, don't do standard testing, don't use standards at all, and you figure out how you're going to integrate MakerEd into the classroom. That's so disrespectful. And so it's our job as product makers to help bridge the gap. And I believe that MakerEd absolutely has all the tools. And the maker movement in general, maker companies have every tool available to us. But we have to make an effort to bridge the gap. So in our case, what we decided to do is we're not educators. We cannot launch into standards, and we cannot write curriculum. We cannot do that. But instead, we decided we're going to pick the national next generation science standards, NGSS, and we're going to build these curricular crosswalks. We're going to map challenges that we do to different engineering design standards in NGSS and help them bridge that gap. And we create as much as we can external content or professional development to help scaffold them, and we take it seriously. But we also don't pretend that we're going to be able to go all the way. So we give them as much as we can of the materials that they need, and then they can form it how they want. I think there's actually there's a chart that I'll show you in a bit, actually. Oh, can I show a little video before? This is just a fun video.
Remember these? Oh, now I have to go get my water now. Well, why not try the electronic version of it that you can make right at your home with littleBits? Here's how it works. Water is right next to it, so you don't need to go all the way to go grab your water. Then press the button. And there you go. Your medicine, your water, and a tracker for how much you took this week. Let's try this again. Inside this machine is where you reload your items. There are 5 slots, just like how you will insert them into these little boxes.
The video goes on, but it's not like a product that's ready for prime time. It's not something that you're going to go sell, but this is an example of how if you start from a problem that you have, if we democratize the tools, these learning experiences will happen every day. And so in this case, to go back to your earlier question, in the previous case, it could be an opportunity to teach about iteration, about problem solving, could be to teach about how to create a motor track. It could be an opportunity to teach about data collection. It could be an opportunity to teach about medicine intake and how difficult it is to help the elderly track the medicines. There are all these avenues that you could take to help bridge the gap. But as product companies, it is our job to kind of like help make the work easier for administrators and teachers for their daily lives.
And just so folks will understand what they're seeing there, that student or group of students who created that, all the tools in that video came out of the kit, or are they incorporating other things, or how did you get?
No, they incorporate all sorts of other things. So I'm now, a lot of the examples that I'm showing are littleBits, but we are constantly advocating, and we are huge fans of a lot of other maker tools out there, Raspberry Pi and Arduino and 3D printing and Sphero and all these other tools and technologies that are out there that should and can be combined all the time. So in this case, the electronics were littleBits, but there was also cardboard and paper and a lot of times mechanical accessories like Kinects or Lego, and the more of it, the better.
I know that when I talk to companies at this conference, many of them are focused on one specific academic area. You're not. You're more interdisciplinary. I'm curious, what opportunities does that create for your company? What challenges when you're designing products, when you're thinking about how they're going to be used, when you're trying to tackle different subjects and help students across different subjects? What kind of challenges does that create for you?
It's very challenging. One of the tenets of product design is imagining how the product will be used in order to design it. And so with littleBits, there are 70 different bits. There are billions and hundreds of billions of combinations. And so we cannot possibly imagine how they're going to be used. So in fact, what we try to do is we develop these sort of design principles of modularity, open-endedness, universality of language, and gender neutrality. And we try to develop our tools around that, and then we test. A lot of it is kind of trying things in different forms. But there is no, we have a challenge in that we can't make a spoon and then give the spoon to someone and say, like, is the spoon working or not, and then changing it. It's just like too many applications to even try.
Yeah. When you have your theory of implementation is, it could be,
It could be anything.
Yeah, 1,000 things. I was going to ask you, what kind of feedback do you hear from classroom teachers that makes you most proud? I mean, when you're hearing feedback from them on, I used littleBits in a class this way or that way, or I heard this from students. What pleases you the most when you get particular feedback from folks who are out in the trenches?
I would say that my favorite kind of feedback is the one that comes directly from the kids and from the students. That's I think that there is no gratification and encouragement more that we could get from these stories. Actually, this particular story that we have up there is a workshop that happened, and this very young boy, Odin, made an anti-bullying device because he was being bullied at school, and so he made a buzzer contraption to scare the bully away every time he came. And like, he didn't say anything. He didn't give us a compliment. There is no quote, but you see that happen, and the gratification is immediate, and the encouragement is immediate. But we've also heard things that get us excited about solving the problem even harder. So even yesterday, I was talking to some of my colleagues at littleBits, and they said that one of our star teachers who teaches in Brooklyn is an expert in Maker Edge. She knows every tool, every device. She's always researching new ways to engage the students. But she said, my job is to go to the classroom and be the distraction. And that's a shame that she thinks of her job as distraction. And somehow we've led her to believe as a society that the work that she's doing is not science enough or is not rigorous enough, that she thinks of it as distraction. And so we get feedback that's also negative, that we're saying, okay, now we have, our job is to help this educator feel confident and feel like she has credibility in front of her other teachers and administrators. So that's the kind of feedback that kind of goes the other way. There's actually one that I remember. These are just some random things that we've seen online. Sorry, we'll just jump. These are some of the teachers that were our advisors and helped us develop the content, which we are so indebted to. Actually, I'd love to give them a round of applause if people are there. These are teachers that, you know, we call them rock star teachers. They're constantly doing extra work outside the classroom to research new ways to engage students. They're at once really rigorous in their thinking, but also very experimental. So we're very lucky to have them. But I actually wanted to point something out.
And those were folks who help you make sense. I'm sorry.
Oh no, this is like a string of videos now. No, I'm not going to go into those. Look at that face. I mean, it's incredible. This is actually, so you were asking about feedback. This is the most adorable thing you could ever hear. This is a fifth grader after a class. After a class that she's done. Mr. Wilson, I've been waiting for this my whole life. Like, how could you not want to do everything in your power to try and make this moment accessible to every student in the world when you hear that kind of thing? Yeah. It's impossible.
I know that you began littleBits, as we've talked about, in the consumer space. You've learned a lot about experiences in informal education. Let me ask you, what have you learned from littleBits experiences in trying to supplement formal education experiences with informal education outside of the classroom, information that students can pick up on their own outside of traditional classroom environments?
I've learned, I mean, I've heard sometimes, actually when I was growing up, we would hear this all the time, where the teachers are always complaining, kids these days, they're not curious. Kids these days, they don't want to learn. Kids these days, they only want to play. And that's actually not true at all, because if a kid wants to, let's say, you know, if they have a goal, a problem they want to solve. Let's say a young boy wants to torment his sibling. It's like a very legitimate assumption that, yes, that a lot of young boys want to do that.
As a parent, I can attest to this. Yes. So, yeah.
Like that boy, and this is a hypothetical boy, but that boy will go through extra length to learn how to make a contraption to torture his sibling. Torture, not torture, torment. Right. Sorry. But in that process, if you then come as an adult or as a school and inject yourself in that process and use it as an opportunity for him to learn about engineering or structures, or learn about mechanics, or learn about design or 3D printing, all of that, you are leaning into his natural obsession and curiosity and desire for learning, but in his particular application. And so what I've learned is that creating divisions between this is school, this is after school, this is playtime, this is Minecraft time. We're not, humans are not like that. The boundaries are much more porous. Yeah. So either there are many parents with siblings that do this to each other, or you guys agree.
I was going to say, we're going to have, we've had some questions roll in from the audience, and in a minute I'm going to go to some of those and direct them to Ayah. Let me ask you, I mean, we've written about, at Ed Week, about efforts to try to draw female students into STEM fields and overcome what stereotypes they might bring with them, their fears and their misgivings about going into STEM. How do you hope that littleBits will overcome some of those barriers and help guide female students into STEM?
Getting more girls engaged in STEM and STEAM is one of the hidden missions of the company. I say hidden, and then I reveal it, but I say hidden because we don't wear it on our sleeve. This is not something that we kind of say this is what the product is for, this is what the company is for, no, but it's embedded in the way we design and we make and we market and we showcase everything. In fact, actually, let me see, I think I may have, oops. Oh, I should go back to that. That's a cool video, I'll show you. But this is an example of how we tackle this problem. On the left side is a traditional circuit board. It's what you're used to seeing. It's a green PCB with electronics on top of it. On the right is how we've designed littleBits to be. They're white so that they break your they break with the stereotype that you usually associate to electronics, which is usually always associated to boys. So they're white. They have handwriting on them because it's more human and organic. It doesn't feel like machine made. And they're candy colored or neon colored because why not? And at the same time, it's 4 colors that are gender neutral. And so we embed these decisions in everything that we make. It's a very, very deliberate process that we go through. As a result, and this is not formal research, but as a result, anecdotally, we hear from our teachers that they have 40% engagement in girls with littleBits, which is unheard of in electronics. And so it's something that we continue to invest in and work on, and it's extremely important. But similar to what I was saying in the very beginning, about how to integrate STEM, we can't keep doing what we're doing. We have to do things differently in order to engage girls because what we have done hasn't worked. Yeah. And so this is one of the things that we're trying, but a lot of other people try different things as well.
How are the folks, you and the folks on your team making these decisions about what this might lure female students into our product? How do you make those decisions? Is it based on feedback you hear from, that you've heard from teachers, students, parents? Where do your ideas come from in terms of knowing, well, this might appeal to female students out there?
First, it takes putting this value really high up in the company. So gender neutrality is something that everybody knows is extremely important and is a guiding principle for the company. So everybody knows that. The second is, to be honest, the diversity of the team itself. Our team is very diverse. And so diversity of team brings diversity of thought, brings diversity of design. And so automatically you start to get more opinions on how to do things differently and a lot of divergent opinions about how to do. But then also we test. I mean, we try to lean into hobbies that girls already have instead of imposing in them, and we kind of inject ourselves in it. So this is an example of an organization that we love called Girls Who Mine. It's girls who love playing Minecraft, and they have these after-school programs together. And so we made a mod, an integration to Minecraft, so that you can control Minecraft with the physical world using littleBits, and you can control the physical world using Minecraft. And there's a little bit of a mind jumble going on there, but they love it because it's already a hobby that they have. It's already something that they're passionate about, and then you use it as an opportunity to integrate more technology, and it becomes seamless and in fact welcome.
Yeah, I'm cognizant of the time. I know we've had some questions come in from the audience. If the tech folks want to send those in, maybe I can start directing those to Ayah. Here's a question from Dan in the audience. What are some of the best practices to help teachers make the transition from, I think that says, hey, here's how you turn a light on, towards deeper, rich content learning in STEAM subjects? Any thoughts on that, Ayah?
So prior to today, we hadn't had a kind of a full solution to try to address that. We'd been working on it for a little while, but prior to today, we were asking the teachers to do too much work. They would have to go to the forums, they would have to go in the booklets, they would have to piece information together. And so now we've developed a professional development program that a course that they can take online that can help. There is a 120-page teacher guide. There is lots of content on the site, and our goal is to keep producing these challenges and these invention-based challenges frequently, so that they always have additional resources. And then, of course, the tie-in to NGSS. But then if you have information that you want as a teacher that's very, very discipline-specific, we're not going to be able to do that. We will help create these bridges to the different disciplines, but then we would need to lean on the domain expertise of the teacher.
We've had a question roll in about how do you address questions of access and equity? What steps do you envision littleBits taking to make your product affordable for under-resourced schools, for communities, for parents?
It's a problem. It's something that we acknowledge very well, that littleBits are very expensive, and a lot of teachers and schools are not able to afford them. It's because even though the bits appear very simple, they're actually quite complex. Majority of them are computers. The majority of them have upwards of 50, 100 components on them, and their design is quite complex. And so the manufacturing process is actually quite tedious and expensive, and we are not able right now to sort of slash prices where we want them to be. But it's already starting to happen. As our volumes go up, we get manufacturing efficiency. As we ourselves get better at manufacturing, we get more efficiency and cost out of it. And it's something that we'll continue to invest in. So it's very important. It's something we are aware of, that we're working on, that is not at all lost on us. But it's something, to be honest, electronics is a volume game. So we sell in millions now, but it's almost like millions are peanuts in the electronics industry. You have to be in the hundreds of millions of units to be able to get those price breaks, and we'll get there.
Yeah, this is sort of a related question, not directly related to littleBits, I imagine, but Shiloh asks, how can school districts with limited resources create makerspaces, their own makerspaces? Given your background creating littleBits, any thoughts on how they could do this on their own if they're interested?
There are a lot of resources. One of my favorite resources is the Fab Lab network, where they have very, very low cost, the Fab Foundation. They have very low cost playbooks for how to create makerspaces and tools that they point to that are low cost. It's still expensive. It still requires some money. The other place, of course, the Bible of the maker movement, Make Magazine, has frequently lists and instructions on how to do it. But what we've also heard from our communities is sometimes all it takes is to ask for help. So we've seen teachers that just send an email to the parents and say, we have a room, bring your tools and your toys, and parents will bring in, one parent has a drill set, the other parent has a mini laser cutter, a 3D printer, another parent has, a whole giant stash of Lego, the other has littleBits, and they bring them, and suddenly you have a makerspace. That's all it takes. It takes a room, a bunch of stuff, and a table, and that's a makerspace. And then you can build it up as you go.
A very practical question sent in, I'm assuming from a classroom educator. How can you put this in use in a 42-minute class? Doesn't it take more time than that to incorporate littleBits within a class that's that short?
So this is a good question. It's one of the experiences that is a constant reminder to us that we can't be arrogant in assuming what is needed. So we'd go in and design these 1 hour long workshops, and we're like, this is what teachers need. And then the first time you go and test it, and the teacher's like, no, I need a 20-minute activity. That's all I have is 20 minutes to do this. And so we go back and refactor. So the STEAM student set has in it all these different challenges and activities that range from 5 minutes to an hour to more. And you can put multiple together to make multi-hour, or you can do something in 20 minutes, 40 minutes, depending how you want. And we even counted this is a little bit of our obsessive angle. We even counted how much time it takes to unpack and repack littleBits, so that we're taking into account that you're going to get the box, you open it, you take the bits out. That time is counted because all you have is that 42-minute slot. So it's taken into account, and of course always open for feedback on how to make it even better.
I think we got a question from a littleBits customer here. But my son loves using littleBits to build, but he doesn't understand why they work. How important is it that he understands the why? How can I help him understand? Any thoughts on that?
I'm glad you asked, Anonymous, because we so the last kit that we launched, the Gizmos and Gadgets kit, started doing this. The STEAM student set does it very deliberately a lot more, which is have a section called How It Works, just exactly for that reason. In the beginning, one of our assumptions was that we should just sort of get them to create the activity and the invention and not necessarily go into how it works, but we've heard that feedback before, and so it goes into, let's say you have a remote control car. The remote control car is activated by a wireless transmitter. The wireless transmitter uses radio frequency, etc. So we start to go into the technology and the science as much as possible to explain how it works, to basically answer that exact question.
I think we're at the end of our allotted time. Thank you all for joining us today. If you'll join me in thanking Ayah Bdeir for participating in this discussion.
Can I do, just before we break, can I do two shameless plugs? One is there's something that we're very, very excited by that we weren't ready to share just yet, but became formal a few days ago, is that we have a program in the summer with the New York City Department of Education, a summer program that we're very, very excited to take part of. So I would urge you to watch that space. And the second thing is at 11 o'clock we have a meetup a few doors down here, actually, where you can get your hands on littleBits, where myself and my colleagues will be there to answer questions, and we invite you all to come as well.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.